Hello once again! We're finally back with the Battlebots Season 1.0 reviews, looking back at the early days of Battlebots. The show created when Robot Wars went over to the UK. You can watch the Robot Wars retrospective if you want the details on that one. I'm not going to get into all that. But Battlebots was a big deal and had some iconic moments, some classic legendary machines, and for those who enjoy watching Battlebots today, this is the early days of what created that. When you see some of those banners up above, this is where you'll see some of those champions be crowned. But that's enough introductory waffle from me. Let's get into the review. Let's do this. Admittedly, I don't think much of Sean and Bill. There isn't anything wrong with them, don't misunderstand me. They just don't have the same showmanship and charisma of, say, a Craig Charles, a Bill Nye, Chris and Kenny, or, of course, our legendary announcer, Farouk. They're perfectly serviceable, they just don't have that same charisma that I gravitate to that I would with some of the other people that we see in Robot Combat shows. So I'm editing this part in now because it just hit me that Bill Dwyer actually hosts Battlebots Destructathon nowadays, and I think the reason it only just hit me is because it is a night and day thing from Season 1.0. Now I'm not going to make any assumptions, but clearly there's a point where Bill Dwyer really seems to get the hang of this, where I feel like I'm going to enjoy him a whole lot more. Well, we'll just have to wait and see. But safe to say, he's doing a brilliant job nowadays in my opinion. Before the first fight, we get a look into the robots. Bill Nye explains how Bender spins at 1,600 RPM, which of course would have been pretty decently powerful for the time. They then look at Voltark and the builder Stephen Felk. Voltark is a sturdy wedge with a lifting arm, and I was already certain it would be able to tank anything Bender Spinner could dish out. It looks incredibly solidly built, even internally. I'm really impressed with how well it's been assembled. Now the match begins with Voltark rushing over as Bender focuses on spinning up. They crash, and Bender is definitely not getting up to the promised speed as Voltark runs into them, ripping one of the casters off. Bender is clearly worse for wear. The spinner is much too high to do much of anything, and while they dodge the lifting arm of Voltark, they end up on the kill saws. Voltark keeps ramming into them meanwhile, as Bender slows down to a crawl over time, with their spinners spinning so much slower. It's just getting worse and worse for them. Voltark pushes Bender into the wall, and I am shocked at how little Bender is actually moving at this point, with the fight eventually ending as Bender is lifted up finally by Voltark. It goes the distance and to the judges, but to no one's surprise, it goes to Voltark. Honestly, not a great fight. Voltark did what I expected and was definitely impressive in its own right, but Bender really failed to perform. Even Steven said that the fight was kinda lame. Next up was KillerHerz versus Gnome 2. They introduced the two robots and it's definitely interesting. Gnome 2 is made by a 15-year-old builder, and while it admittedly isn't that impressive looking, I did like the visual appeal of the robot, something that the builder Jerome Miles would specialise in with future builds like Red Devil and Dragon King. Yeah, that was kind of shocking when I realised who the builder was. I did also find the interview with Jerome kind of funny. Did you have anything to eat? No. Are you gonna win? No. There are some funny moments in this. KillerHerz, meanwhile, was the first offering from John Reed, who would become a famous builder for Axe robots, creating such legendary machines like TerraHerz and Beta. I was excited to revisit this after so long and see how John Reed's first robot would do in Battlebots. Gnome starts the match moving, but then KillerHerz rushes over and goes in swinging, decapitating Gnome 2. Soon more damage is dealt as Gnome 2 breaks down. So then TerraHerz, wanting a new challenge, fights the Battlebox itself, fighting the Pulverizer, which, funnily enough, KillerHerz is more powerful than the old school Pulverizer. Though it is evident that KillerHerz at some point lost movement, so the commentary seemed confused as to who was counted out. Guys, listen, come here. Gnome 2? Died 5 years before KillerHerz lost movement. There's no question. Anyway, like I was saying, KillerHerz won, and that was a brilliant first fight for KillerHerz. In the post-match interview, it was funny to hear John say, "You gotta go for it," which is something he definitely had to relearn with Beta. Donna, meanwhile, makes another penis joke, offers a kiss, and kisses Gnome too. Ah, the 90s/2000s. How I don't miss them. Short but sweet, Gnome 2 was fun and died spectacularly. And of course, KillerHerz showcased itself pretty nicely in this opening performance, really showing some good power behind its hammer. Though I was definitely a little bit nervous about it losing mobility, I definitely was still excited to see how it would do in the next round. It's time for the now extinct Super Heavyweights. Larger than the already larger-than-life heavyweights, these robots come weighing in twice the weight. Minion is the #1 ranked robot with a large saw, headed by Christian Karlberg, who became famous not just with Minion, but with robots like Overkill, Dreadnought, Overdrive, and Mecha Rampage, as well as working on what would end up being the last version of Yeti. In fact, actually, if you want an idea on that legacy, Overkill now has a permanent residence as a showbot, fighting against other showbot battlebots and occasionally hopeful competitors at Battlebots' Destructathon and Proving Ground when an opponent isn't able to make it to the competition. Such as when Hellfire had to fight Overkill instead of Travesty because Travesty couldn't make it, and Hellfire actually lost! I can't believe it! I know I'm going off topic here, but normally Overkill is like a punching bag for the hopeful competitors, yet I think this is the first time that Overkill actually won, which is crazy! It is just, even though it is usually a punching bag though, it is nice to see the legacy live on. Grey Matter, meanwhile, is a large ramming spike. Nothing crazy, but a fairly solid idea, I suppose. The match begins, and after some hesitation, Grey Matter rushes over, getting some nice rounds in, and then begins pushing Minion, who ends up losing their saw in the attack. Minion is struggling and panicking as Grey Matter keeps pushing them, while Minion struggles to get into position before pointing the Lexan wedge to Grey Matter, who immediately pierces through. Minion, though, does have a good rebuttal by pushing Grey Matter up the wall. It's becoming a pushing match as both robots shove each other back and forth. The fight does admittedly slow down at this point, as the robots can't do a whole lot to each other. We get a pretty nice wedge ram from Minion into the pulverizer towards the end of the fight. But that's about it, as it goes to the judges in what was a pretty close fight. The judges deliberate and they give the fight to Minion. Honestly, I was a little surprised given the damage from Grey Matter, but I know classic Battlebots judge things a little differently, so I know I have to adjust and get used to the way that the fights were judged back in the day. And the fight was rather close either way, so I'm not disappointed by any means. Or at least, not disappointed by the judge's decision. The fight wasn't anything too special. The Super Heavyweights are definitely something I always find intriguing, as someone who never really got to see them reach their full potential like they did in the States. But oftentimes, I feel like a lot of the Super Heavyweights feel like heavyweights, but with a lot of additional unnecessary padding. The power doesn't seem to quite match the scale like you would get, say, with middleweights to heavyweights, for instance. I'm still a fan, don't misunderstand me. There are still plenty of Super Heavyweights that I'm a fan of, but I think I'm generally with a lot of the modern... I think I'm generally with a lot of Battlebots builders that it's probably fine that they're gone. Overall, this episode definitely didn't have the strongest fights. What with Bender barely working, Gnome 2 dying quickly, which, while entertaining, of course meant there wasn't much of a fight regardless, and a Super Heavyweight pushing match, none of these fights today really got me excited this time around. It's definitely an episode that, if you can find, is easier to skip. Hopefully the next episode picks up the ante once again, much like episode 1 did, but we'll have to wait and see for next time. Thank you so much for watching this review. If you did like, please be sure to leave a like down below, and maybe if you watched this episode in the past, leave a comment to let me know what you thought. What are your opinions on the Super Heavyweights? Do you love the Super Heavyweights? Are you glad they're gone? Or are you in the middle like I am? And if you subscribe and hit that notification bell, you can be notified of future reviews on the channel. I'm reviewing Robot Wars Series 2, and I'm hoping to bring back my King of Bots reviews again, as you all seem to like episode 1, and I'm hoping to finally get out my review of Battlebots Proving Ground 2023. So be sure to stay tuned for when that finally comes out. Of course, also, if you become a member, you get access to custom emotes as well as members-exclusive videos when they come out. So again, thank you all so much for the support, and I hope to see you all next time. Bye, guys!